those needs, and we'll be finishing the session talking about that and exchanging some ideas around that. Is everybody happy so far? Is that what you thought, more or less, you were signed up for in this session? I'm not seeing too many people leave, so I'm going to take that as permission to continue. As I say, throughout this, please feel free to interject. So, the US Army, big users of design thinking. And as part of the kind of Freedom of Information Act, they are compelled to publish their field operations manual in America. And in 2010, they published the 5th edition of their field operations manual. And in this, the first few pages is written an introductory letter by one of the commanding officers there. And he uses this language to describe the approach that they take in dealing with the growing uncertainty in the world, the rapid rate of change, increased competitiveness, and greater decentralization. And as I read this recently, I thought how well it mirrored the uncertainty and the change that we are facing in our world. I really felt that if this is something that could work well for the US Army, and you imagine the kind of varied and aggressive and uncertainty that they go into, if this is a framework of tools and techniques that they have found, then surely it can be applied to us today as we face the challenge of dealing with a new COVID world. So they use this not as a checklist, but they say it's a critical and creative thinking methodology to help commanders understand the environment, analyze problems, and consider potential approaches so that they can exploit opportunities, identify vulnerabilities, and anticipate transitions during a campaign. So that's what we'll be doing today. We'll just touch on one or two of the subjects. If after this you want to have a follow-up conversation about many of the other tools, I think there's about 50 design thinking tools, all that can be deployed in various ways. I've added some contact details at the end. Feel free to reach out and we can look together how we can apply these to your organization. The benefit of design thinking tools is that they're very visual. They allow us to develop a common understanding of what's happening at every point in the process, and how we can describe that from the customer's point of view, how we can describe that as the frontline interaction with the business, how we can then describe what that means from a systems perspective, from a policy and process perspective. So it allows us to address and assess this life cycle. Einstein famously said, if I were given 1 hour to save the planet, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute resolving it. And so an important part of design thinking, and we'll do that today, is really understanding the problem, really trying to unpack that. By nature, we are problem-solving machines. We love to solve things, and we're quick to add value and show our worth and show how clever we are. But here Einstein is, one of the great minds. He's saying, I would really slow things down. I would really understand the root causes, what's behind this, what problem I'm trying to solve, and then only once I spent enough time doing that, I'd quickly then be able to solve the problem. But first of all, I'd really sense check that I'm answering the right question. So that's what we'll do today as well. So first of all, again, I haven't had a chance to speak to you. So whether you have direct customers, whether you run a website and you're talking about users, whether you're working in HR functions and you're thinking about the changes that your employees make, or your learners, or your business partners, or your colleagues. We're talking about people, and we're designing for people and the interaction between the human and the system. Okay, quick question here, and I'm going to need some audience participation to wake us up in this. So kind of no wrong answers here. So I'd ask you just to throw in to give me some feedback. So healthcare in America is big business. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. I don't know how big it is. Kind of the way the health insurance system set up. Patients have a lot of control over their own treatment, much more than they do here in Europe, and I don't know how it is in Asia, but they can really dictate to doctors, I'd like to be on this medication, I'd like to be referred to this hospital, and if they feel that they don't get that, responsiveness from a good doctor, they can just change doctor, they can just change hospital, and the patient care has been seen as really important in this. So hospitals really wanted to know in this study what makes customers or patients recommend a hospital. What would make them come back over and over again? What would make them talk positively about them? If they had the chance to, if they were asked by a friend, which hospital should I go to? What do you think? Have you tried the local 3? What would you advise? What would make people talk positively about the hospital? So, this is where I'd like some interaction. Where do you think, people rated getting better within the top 10 reasons that they would recommend a hospital? So, getting better, it feels fairly fundamental, but where would you, anybody at all, anybody want to start us off with a thought in terms of where this would come in the top 10? Just throw out some numbers, just some gut feel on this. Anyone want to hazard a guess? Don't make me pick on someone like Brett School. Who's going to share an idea with us? No?
Hi, Brandon. If you can see the chat function.
All right. Oh, is it in the chat function?
Yeah. Response from Peter mentioning about price after service.
Very good. Very good. Okay, well, I'll take you through the reasons. Now, interestingly, that obviously the hospitals thought that getting better would be number 1, 2, and 3 on this list of why patients would recommend a hospital. The first mention of getting better was down at number 14 on the list, and that was related to pain management, how they manage the pain. And I think it's interesting as we read through the top 10 here, as we take a minute to do that it was more around how they were made to feel. It was about, did they take care of me? Were they friendly and cheerful? Did the hospital take the time to understand my complaints, my concerns, my worries, and did they respond accordingly? If I had particular wishes, were they explained and were they taken into account? Did I feel like I was well listened to? Was I kept well informed through this? It's a lot about that, how they made me feel at a very vulnerable and anxious moment. Did I feel well regarded? It reminds me of the famous quote from the poet Maya Angelou. She said that people may forget what you say, people may forget what you do, but people never forget how you made them feel. And I think this, in these top 10s, it's much more about how they were made to feel during this time. And I think often that's the case when we sell products or services, even experiences. It's much more about the memory and how we were made to feel throughout this process. If we think about the iPhone, we've recently about to have an iPhone 12 announced, but nobody uses or very few people who have iPhones use them to the maximum of their capacity. No one's really running out of, I don't know, maybe you're running out of space, but the functionality of things, that extra 10% processing speed, nobody's lives are so busy. Very few people rather have such an intense use of their iPhone. Generally, they use them for some very simple things. Probably the functionality that existed 5 years ago probably hasn't changed for most people in that way. And yet, people will be queuing up outside of Apple shops. People will have been logging in at all times of the day or night to listen to the keynote address by Apple to find out what latest products they're doing. Because I think Apple have recognized that, as have many brands, and they're not unique in this, but I think they've done well in recognizing it's something much more than just hardware. It's something much more than just a system. It's almost this feeling of belonging to a club. It's the way that makes you feel and the way that does that. I have a hand up from Stephen. Is that an agreement with that?
Yes, Stephen, definitely agreement.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, and yes, so we like it, don't we? Because it makes us feel a certain way. So already I'd kind of invite you through the course of this presentation just to remind yourself, what are those things that you are selling that's much, that extends much beyond the tangible products or services that you are giving? What's that feeling that you're giving to people, and how during this time of vulnerability, how during this time of uncertainty, can you step in as a brand, as you can step in as a customer experience leader to really amplify that? Okay, there are lots of different methodologies for design thinking. IDEO, the Design Council have their own particular take. This is one from Dark Horse in Germany. We see the kind of double diamond approach. We see the emphasis on continuous iteration and back and forward in understanding. This is a design methodology from Minds and Makers, again in Germany, really emphasizing the fact that this is an ongoing and continual process. It's a process of understanding the customer, really understanding the issue that we're trying to solve, to empathize with them. And only then that we've understood the true needs of our different customer groups, the true needs that we're trying to solve, that then we look into exploring those opportunity areas. We then can converge and come up with concepts and prototypes that we can then test with customers. And then through a series of iterations and exploring and researching and prototyping and testing, that we can be sure that we can deliver a minimum viable product with a minimum viable experience that we can launch into the market. And it's been proven over multiple studies that this approach, although it seemed longer initially, with this constant need to iterate, with this increased step of really understanding the needs of the customer, that they are far more successful and actually far quicker to get to market. So pause for any questions, and Stephen, feel free to interrupt. I can't see the chat function, so if there are questions that pop up, feel free to interrupt me and tell me what they are, and I'll slow right down and answer any questions.
Sure, no problem. So if
Great.
anyone there's any question at the moment, please feel free to use the chat function. Do type your questions in and you know, your company you're from, and I will direct the questions to Brandon.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. And
No
likewise, from a language point of view, if there was something that I said that you weren't quite sure of, that you'd like me to repeat, or maybe to go into more details, you found it so fascinating, you'd like me to go into more detail, then I'd be happy with that as well. And I really want you to get what you need from the session today. I feel like a really good investment in this. So, first of all, what is customer experience? And sometimes something I do is I ask people to write down the word, 10 other words that they associate with the idea of running, what running is. And then I get people to compare what this comparison is. And invariably there's only around 5 words that overlap. Because for some people, running is the most thrilling thing. It's what they choose to do with their free time. It's the smell of success. It's pulling on their shorts in the morning. It's a sense of freedom. For somebody else, it was a humiliating experience as a child going to school. For some people, it's a necessary evil, something that they only have to do if there's no other kind of fitness available to them. All of these things, people have very different connotations. And that's something, you know, even that's very simple with this idea of running. When we talk about more complex things, such as customer experience, it can become less clear again. Everybody feels them. I'm sure if we had time, we were face to face, we could get a sense of what customer experience is to each of us. It'd be slightly different. It's important that we get these common understandings. And one of the things that the design thinking tools helps us with is to bring everybody very quickly into a common language that they can understand. Almost like those architectural plans that an electrician can pick them up and that they can follow out and they can say, yeah, I understand where my electrics need to go. I understand how that's going to work. Or a builder, or a structural engineer, or a plumber, or health and safety, or whoever it is that's working on the project, they can all refer back to something that's static, that they have a common understanding of. And so one of the tools we'll use in a minute is a well-known tool, but it allows us to understand and gain this common perspective. For me, it's helpful to understand that customer experience happens at many levels. And here are 3 that I think it's important to note. And again, as we, in a minute, as we go through an example of a customer experience, we can think about these 3 lenses. And then for the more experienced, you can kind of really reflect and say, how does that apply to me? How does that apply to the challenges I've gone through? So customers, so we think about a restaurant here. So customers think about experience in a moment. And we know that there are critical moments within a customer lifetime, those that are much more significant than others. And I guess in a restaurant, one of the most significant would be the actual arrival of the food. And the moment that you see it, maybe that moment that you take the first bite, the moment that you look around the table at one another and everybody comments politely or impolitely about the quality of the food. That would be considered an interaction. Probably within this, a real moment of truth within that. And when we think about measurement and understanding the customer experience, one, we need to recognize what each of these interactions are. We need to be aware of the most critical interactions to customers, really make sure that we have those right, look at opportunities to really dial those up and express the brand in those moments. We need to be aware of the journey. Now we can choose to break these down into different ways. We'll talk about another journey in a moment. That journey may be the moment of arriving and being seated and being welcomed at the restaurant. It may be the journey from getting the menu and having all the food explained, the specials, maybe a few recommendations, some tips on the wine list, what they've got fresh in. So you feel like you've got some insider information on this, that you can really make a good choice. Some validation about the choice. Great choice, sir. Very well done. And then the wait, the conversation that we have as we wait, right to when that food has arrived and we take the first bite. So from the kind of promise of the food, when the menu is presented and the options are doing, right through to the fulfillment of that promise, that's typically what we say regard as a journey. And again, so we can think about our own journeys in our own companies. What are those moments from making a promise? What promises do we make? To the fulfillment of those promises. And within those, again, we'll have those key moments of truth, those key interactions and touch points within that. Then we step back again and we recognize that there's a holistic, a kind of more strategic view of our brand and our companies. Here we've zoomed out and we think about the general perception of the restaurant. What was the website like? How easy was it to book? Is it easy to find? Was it well recommended? Is the food consistent? Can I rely on that? Can I really recommend it to somebody else, knowing that it's good every time? Is there good parking outside? Do I feel safe walking past? All of these things kind of contribute. Is it good value for money? Is it an ethical restaurant? Is they sourced locally? Do I feel like it's good value for money? All of these things will combine into a general perception that maybe users in the first instance can't quite put their finger on why it was good, and we have to do some more diagnostic work. But this is really the feeling of the overall impression of the company. So again, let's I'd encourage you to use this as a framework, or as we go through another type of journey. How are we doing for questions, Stephen? Have we still got the audience with us?
I hope so. There's no question at the moment, but just a reminder to everyone, yeah, feel free to post your question on the chat function.
Okay. Is it clear enough? Any questions so far? Is it simple enough? Is it too simple? Do I need to go quicker?
Huisan mentioned yes, she's still here. So yeah, you have the audience with you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. And again, but really, don't leave the session without asking the question that you really want and making sure that you have the answer that you need. Okay, I'd like to give a tool now to understanding the customer needs. And we're going to look at a journey. We're going to look at this from the perspective of Jake, who's going on holiday. And as I go through this, though, as well as understanding kind of customer journey mapping, I'd really like you to understand, I'd really like you to think about your own journeys. So in your mind, make that journey for your customers. What's their pre-purchase phase to their journey? What's their user experience phase? What are those things that maybe a customer experiences that you're not directly in control of? What are the unsaid things as part of this? And so as I go through this, pay 50% attention to me maybe, but 50% attention at least to your own work. And hopefully it will spark a thought or an idea that you'll go, yes, that's something I don't understand, or yes, they do this, and it's an opportunity for me to take on board. So I'll take you through this, and again, an invitation to speed me up, slow me down, or ask any questions along the way. So this is Jacob, or Jakob, I suppose if he's German, and he's 28 years old, and his catchphrase is, "Don't believe the hype." And Jacob, you can see, I think he's got a kind of neck scarf on. He's one of these kind of designer types, and he still has his Nokia 3210. You know, he's one of those, don't believe the hype. Yeah, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And my Nokia 3210 works just fine, and I can charge it up once on Monday, again on Thursday, and that sees me through the week, and I'm perfectly happy with this. But Jacob, he's reading a magazine, and he remembers that he wants to go on holiday. He really feels this, he's been pretty burnt out, and so he reads through and he tries to find some inspiration about where he's going to go on holiday. He then goes to a travel agent, and he speaks to a very knowledgeable person behind the counter, and he comes out really enthused with lots of different ideas about where he might go. He then takes this person and he thinks, well, is this person just selling me something? Are they on commission? I'm going to do some more independent research, and I'm going to look at the reviews, and I'm going to read those through. And more and more we see the importance of peer reviews in our service, and the importance of good reviews. But if you're like me, even with this one, you know, many of them have this kind of distribution, those terrible ones at the bottom. How well were they addressed, and why were people given those terrible experiences? We're about to invest a lot of money. We need to be assured that we're not going to be one of these people who get this terrible experiences. So the importance of going on there and reading and recognizing for our own company those reviews and having a robust review management system in there. Eventually, he then decides the holiday he wants to go on, and he finds the cheapest provider that will give him that. And it's interesting, he uses print media, he goes into the shop, he has an indirect online experience and a direct online insurance experience. And all of these people, up until the point of booking, have invested in this process. And yet, the person who may be buying he bought the experience from may be different to all of these. We don't know. I'm sure we can think of in our own purchase decision where this has been the case, where we review or speak one place and read in a magazine somewhere and then buy from the cheapest. So we can be aware of that. Salesforce did some research, and they analyze that somewhere between 80 to 90% of the purchase decision was made before the customer walked into the shop. The customers now are extremely well informed about what they want to do. And maybe they're just coming for that final point of validation. Maybe if it's a more complex product that you're serving, that they just want, have a specific question about some terms and conditions, some features. They may be just deciding between two, and they want to get a kind of an emotional validation before they do this. But really, so much now of this kind of touch point zero work is done before they come to the shop. And an opportunity, I think, for all of us to be aware of that. Anyway, Jake's then booked his holiday. And now a nice part of the holiday is the daydreaming, the build-up, the anticipation to the holiday. There he is photocopying, and he's thinking, just one more week, I won't have to do any of this. I'm going to be sitting on the beach, sipping cocktails, working on my tan, reading a book, just relaxing, and imagining all the things he can do. He's in a meeting, and some actions are coming out of the meeting, and he's saying, no guys, I'm not picking up this action. Remember, I've got 2 weeks in Barbados coming up, so I won't be at the next workshop. Somebody else will have to pick this up. And so the anticipation's building. This is the event itself. He then packs, and Jake here, he looks like he's a nervous traveler. He's got 2 big suitcases. He wants to make sure he has everything. Can he find the suitcases? Where did he put his passport? All of these things as he starts to anticipate what he might need in the build-up of that. He's waiting impatiently in the desk. Some people have checked in online. He's nervous. Should I have checked in online? Nobody else seems to have as much luggage as me. Have I brought too much? Have I not brought enough? Did I pack this? Will I be charged for these extra suitcases? All of these things kind of running through his inner dialogue that he's worrying about. We think if this were done in a COVID world, he might again have many more questions. Am I wearing the right mask? Have I got hand sanitizer? Are they doing this? Will they let me through with this medication? Have I got a temperature? Will they check something? He'll have many additional questions, even if he were a seasoned traveller. Finally, he gets through, his bags are checked, the weight's okay, he paid for the extra luggage, his ticket's in order, the friendly clerk behind the desk prints him off a new ticket, he didn't need to check in online, and everything's okay. He goes through security, and again, all of this anxiety. He goes through in his socks. How many times does he have to go through? Remember to take his mobile phone out, his watch off, all of these things. Does he feel embarrassed by that, or is he greeted warmly? All of these things added up to the experience. He's now on the boarding. Who's he sat next to? Is he sat next to someone very chatty? Today, is he sat next to someone who sneezes all the way there, or a screaming child? How relaxing is the journey? He then orders a glass of wine. He sits back, he relaxes. And in some ways for Jacob now, his holiday is finally started. Many of his unknowns are done, and at least for the next few hours, he can sit back as he's well served by this air hostess, and everything's taken care of. He can choose his movies and enjoy his holidays. Then as he lands, it looks like a small landing strip that he's got there, and what kind of turbulence is affecting him as he comes into the airport. He gets off, his baggage has arrived, something he was nervous about. He gets out onto the curve. There's nobody there to meet him, so he has to organize his own taxi. And he's a little bit nervous. What's the local currency? What's the process for giving a tip? Will they rip me off? Will they take me the long way? What kind of a taxi driver do I have? And I suppose it's this fear alone that Uber have really they've really exploited in their business model around the transparency, around the security, around the reliability, the consistency of service throughout the world. So they've really done well at recognizing this moment of uncertainty and creating something that's simple. So eventually he gets in his taxi, he arrives at his hotel. And again, this is maybe one of the first times when what he paid for is coming into view. This is almost like in the restaurant experience when the food arrives. And what kind of a hotel is it? Does it look anything like the pictures that he was sold in the marketing brochure? Did they get carried away with their photoshopping and the most advantageous angles? Was it a picture that was taken 20 years ago when it was first opened, but not taken recently? What's done on here? And again, what type of room does he get? You know, he was expected, and the kind of sales agents on the end of the call anxious to sell him a room, sell him the holiday, was promising him the penthouse ocean view experience. But actually when he arrives at the hotel, they have no knowledge of this. And he's in a broom cupboard at the back of the hotel, above the disco that runs till 3 o'clock every night. And this type of year is the year where the Hells Angels use this for their national convention. What type of experience is he getting in this? All of this, his expectations set in one way, how are they being realized in the hotel experience? Eventually he gets himself settled, he does get a good room, He books himself a scuba diving course, and he meets some really good friends, and he checks out some local restaurants in the area. He treats himself to a nice glass of wine after scuba diving, and is able to have a wonderful holiday. Eventually, it's time to go home, and he then meets another friend. And again, an important part of the holiday is the kind of consolidation of the memory. He reviews the holiday on a social media site and talks his friend through all the things. And he bores his friend to death with all the pictures of everything he's taken on his film camera that he's got back from the on those, and they go through and they talk about the holiday, the underwater scuba diving, the people that he met, the experience that he had in the hotel. And again, we recognize the importance. We see that about 10 to 15% of people leave a review. It's often the most extreme people who leave a review. So again, we can be aware of this, and if reviews are important to us as a company, we can go on and see how those reviews are. And there are things that we can do at certain touch points, at certain high points, for encouraging and making that easy, and asking for those reviews. If there's a process of poor reviews, again, we can go in quickly, and we can be very visible about resolving those and giving people those reassurance. So here we are. This is the entire customer experience at a glance. And here we've identified 18 different touch points for this one customer journey, this one experience that Jacob had on his holiday. And we recognize that some of those are within the control of the organization, and some of them exist outside of the control of the organization. But nevertheless, for Jacob, all of them are very real to him, and recognizing the value that he gets from his consideration phase right down to his kind of post-holiday experience and the relatability, those key stories, those key moments that he chooses to retell to his friend. And great experience companies, they recognize the moment of each of these. So Disney, for example, a great experience company, about half of people who go to Disney would go to Disney every year. And they would postpone almost anything to go to Disney. People have postponed weddings and rearranged sporting events, remortgaged cars and homes, and lots of things that they are really kind of hardcore Disney goers. This is part of who they are. And so once they've booked, they recognize this kind of long period between booking and actually going on holiday, this pre-service period. So one of the things that Disney started to do is they started to allow people, I think even up to a year ahead, to start to book their restaurants that they want to stay in, to start to learn about the apartment that they're going to be in, the view that they have, to make any upgrades and any tweaks to the room, the linen, the view, I don't even know which they're in. I think there's one with a zoo or something where you can look out and you can have giraffes and things come up to your window, and they've really kind of gone out of the way that people can customize this. You can customize which fast tracks you get for which events. So you want to go to the Magic Kingdom, already kind of months in advance, you can start to organize those fast tracks and on which days. 6 weeks before you arrive, you receive a band that goes around your wrists. I don't know if anyone's been to Disney. It'd be interesting to get your experience and any feedback on this. But you get a band that very cleverly allows you to manage your fast track and manages you to make any purchases. It's linked to your credit card. I mean, how fantastically dangerous is that in terms of getting carried away and buying things that you just feel as if you're in this moneyless society? And it turned out that they had to make a design adjustment to these bands. It was Frog, the design agency, that was involved in this, and you can look up their case studies if you like afterwards. But people, 6 weeks before that, this came through the post, and people put them on immediately, and people were wearing them in the shower, and people were wearing them swimming, and they were breaking straight away. They had no sense that people were so excited, but they wanted this visual representation that they were going on holiday, and not that they were going on holiday anywhere, but they were going on holiday to Disneyland. And they wanted that moment while they were photocopying, while they were in the coffee shop. They wanted people to say to them, "Oh, what's that you're wearing?" Or for those in the know, to give them a nodding wink and say, "Have a great holiday," and maybe pass along a little insider tip to them about the experience. And so it is, I think, many of us don't work for Disney, but we work for a company that can find those moments of truth, maybe those moments of truth that we don't directly own, but that provide us an opportunity to say who we are as a brand to our customers, how we can reach out and show them that we care, that we understand them, that we want them to have the best possible experience. So recently did some work with Scottish Water. This is the company that provides water for all of Scotland, as the name might suggest. And they were doing some work in the area, quite a big piece of construction work that was going to last maybe a month in the area. And as part of this, they recognized that there'd be some loud drilling through the day as they had to fix some pipes, and there'd be some quite big disruption. And as part of this process, they went to, they made an assessment of how loud it was, and they went around all of the houses in that area, and they said, "We're from Scottish Water, and we just let you know that we'll be doing some work in your area to make sure that you continue to get water, and the best, the highest quality water, and that's uninterrupted for the next generation as well. If you have any questions, my name's Philip. I'll be on site, and I'll be there to answer your questions." We're concerned, though, straight off the bat that we'll be drilling through the day, and this might be loud for people, and we recognize this will be an inconvenience. And if anybody in this house, or anybody that you know in this area will be that works a night shift, that needs to sleep during the day, please let me know, and we will speak to them, and we'll put them up in a local hotel for this period, and we'll work with them and find a way that they can continue this, to get a good night's sleep, and that will be uninterrupted. We found that almost nobody, we had maybe 2 cases out of the whole project that would have qualified for this, and they found alternative arrangements to sleep at, stay with a friend or do something else that was more comfortable for them. But what this did give us, by understanding from the customer's point of view, it provided an opportunity for them to say, "We're from Scottish Water. We care about you. We've thought about the disruption that this might cause you and your family, and we've come with a solution that may help. That's who we are. And if you have any questions, we're here on hand to answer them." And so again, I'm sure, especially in this mid-COVID pandemic that we're in, that there'll be many such opportunities for you and for your company to say, "We care, we're here to partner with you, and we've come with a solution that will help you through this." And again, happy to pause here and take any questions, or if we have any examples of your company that have found these moments of truth where you've been able to lean into a situation, maybe one that you didn't directly own, but one that you feel that you've been able to exploit, maybe the wrong word, but take advantage of, and really show your customers a different side to you than you would normally be able to do. we think about how low engagement water is as a brand, as a utility. And yet they found this way. And I think it's for all of us to find those ways that we can really lean into things. How are we doing, Stephen, on any interaction from the group? Any questions about where this might fit in, or any good examples of from the group about experience that they've had where they've been able to do this?
Yes, there is a question from Wan Chin. So using the experience that Jake had, he utilized different channels and dealt with different companies to get his long-awaited holidays. So question number one, who or how insights of what Jake went through or the moments of truth be consolidated as there were so many parties involved? So that's question number one. Question number two would be, what are the opportunities that can be done to enhance his experience, or what business opportunity are there to cater to people like Jake?
Great, thank you. Two fantastic questions. I think it is a challenge, and this is often the case. And it's the case, I think, when more and more companies, when a delivery is more and more complex, that many different providers, it could have been a different, even within an airport, it's a different provider that provides the security. So maybe a different provider that provides check-in to those who do baggage handling. It's a different service who provides the catering, maybe on board the aircraft. It's a different company who does the taxi. It's maybe only until they get to the hotel that Jake's actually getting something that the holiday company is directly in control of. Maybe even the service that they provide is all independent, and they've just found a cost-effective way of bundling all of this together, and that their skill's been in the simplicity of this and simplicity of working with, I don't know, we could probably name quite quickly 8 different service providers that he has touched along this way. And as an independent travel agent, they'd have very little control of the union policy of the baggage handling company, and the fact that they needed to take a break at a certain time, or were unprepared to lift a suitcase above 25 kilograms, and he had to pay a surcharge to get that on board. All of these things, it's very difficult. And yet, I think great service companies, they aren't responsible for these things, but they own the solution. I think one of the reasons that Amazon has been so successful is that they've really owned this. They've not hid behind, oh, that's this company that we deal with. They're always slow in this. I know that you bought from us as a front end, but actually they have different terms and conditions. They, through their scale, have been able to enforce a consistency of service. And even though they don't provide directly, many of the products that we buy from Amazon, we can always go back to one point of contact, and they will own the problem. And I think seeing this through Jake's perspective gives us an opportunity to step in and own and anticipate those problems. So if in the kind of during the COVID world, if the check-in and flight experience is a concern to people, and our research will tell us this, then we can, even though it's not a process that directly affects us, it affects one of our users. And so we can step in and provide information, videos, text messages, just as he's about to leave the house. We know where he lives. We know how long it'll take him to arrive at the airport. So maybe, 24 hours before he gets a text message, just a reminder, these are the 3 things that you need. Any questions, please ask this, please go on here. And this is the latest information. Roads look clear on the way to the airport. Car park confirmation details is this, and everything's booked. any problem, phone this number. And they can own that end-to-end experience. Or if they don't own part of the experience, they can make that clear. Thank you for booking. Don't forget to book parking on the way. Here are some sites that offer cheap parking. Enter this code for a discount. And so they really take the time and recognize each part of the steps, and they own that level of experience, even if they don't own each individual kind of service that's being offered along the way. I think it's only through research, as you ask people back later, as they maybe go through and recount their own customer journey, they will pick up on naturally that both the ones that they remember and the way that they respond, the language that they use, the way their physiology changes, you will hear this and you will recognize what those repeatable stories are. And I'd really say, don't make any assumptions about why people act in a certain way. Really look at that data, look at the kind of customer verbatim feedback, look at the way that they use the service, how often they go online, how long it takes, how many clicks it takes them to go through, watch them as they go through. Was it easy? Was the language clear? Were they able to change that? Just kind of go through and really understand that in detail. Where did they break out of the process? Where did it freeze? Which questions did they seem to hang on? And are those questions really necessary? Is there an easier way of asking that? Did some case study from a company, an airport in Germany, a regional airport, and they noticed an emerging trend that old people, in particular airports, they'd go to the toilet many times, maybe 6 times in the 2 hours that they were in the airport. And they wanted to deliver a good experience, and they wanted to understand why this might be. And it's reasonable to assume why they might have been going into the toilet. The reason that many of us go into the toilet, and so they could have built many more toilets as part of this, but they decided to follow a design process and really understand what people were doing, why they were going in, and why they were going in quite so often, and why they were choosing certain toilets perhaps. And they found through the process of this and the older people that there was a problem with the overhead tannoy system, that when the announcements were made in the main hall, that people were unable to hear what those announcements were. But when they went into the toilet, the speaker system was much clearer, it was much quieter, that they were able to get certainty and get reassurance about the service, that the flight announcement and any changes to details. And so the problem wasn't a toilet problem. The problem was a signage problem. The problem was an announcement problem. The problem was the way that information was conveyed. And so I'd say one of the things I'd encourage you to do would be to be creative and really watch and really spend time with your customers, and don't make those assumptions about why customers act in a certain way. Why did Jacob drink 3 bottles of wine on the way to holiday? Was he nervous about something? Did he like to drink a lot? So, what was it that he was trying to do? And is there a different way of understanding that for our different customer types? So that your customers will tell you those main moments of truth. And I'd really say to kind of, where possible, try and own the whole experience. GE Medical, just as kind of one final story, they recognized this really well. They did these MRI machines, the machines that you go into and you get the full body scan. And for these to work effectively, people have to lie very, very still to get the best possible results. And with children, this is very challenging to get them to lie still when they're going to sleep, let alone in these machines. And the machines are very loud, and some banging as the kind of cameras move around the tube. And it's very unsettling and quite claustrophobic within this. And again, they weren't responsible for all the parts, but they wanted to own the experience, and they wanted their machines to provide the best possible results for the hospital. So in addition to selling these machines, they sold a kind of experience pack that went along with this. And the experience pack included the following. So prior to the hospital appointment, the child got a book, a kind of storybook that the parents could read to them about this great adventure that they were going to go on. And it was an adventure about going to a pirate bay. And in this pirate bay, they would have to go into these caves, and they'd have to lie very still in these caves, and the fish would swim over the top. And if they lay very still and they were undetected by these fish, that they would be able to get the treasure and at the end of this adventure. And it was told much better than I'm telling it, and but the parents were able to explain this to the child for weeks leading up to going to the hospital about what would happen and how it would be this great adventure. Within the medical center, it was done in a way that, sorry about the background noise. It was done in a way that they were able to go in there, and they were greeted in a way by a pirate, and they were taken in to this machine, and they could see pictures of fish above them. And the stiller that they lay, the stiller the fish would be above them, and the more that feeling of reward, and that they could get this feedback from parents and tell them how well they were going to do and how they were going to receive this treasure at the end. So successful was this project that children afterwards asked if they could have birthday parties back in this medical center. They asked if they could go back with friends because they enjoyed the experience so much. So they had a great experience, and the hospital, they were able to move people through much quicker through the experience, because the quality of output was far superior. And I think just a great example for very little cost, for the cost of providing some literature, for giving it some thought of how that would be. They provided themselves a real competitive advantage within the market. I'm going to pause there and see if there's more questions. I want to put it on mute so there's not so much background noise, but kind of welcome any questions.
Hi, Brandon. There is one question from Yazid. Pro tips on documenting these customer journeys. Do you have any pro tips on this?
What was that? Sorry, did you say that there was a question?
Yazid, yes. Any pro tips on documenting these customer journeys?
I really apologize for this background noise. It's not something that's ever been here before. So would you mind just repeating that question?
We have a question from Yazid. Pro tips on documenting these customer journeys.
Who documents the customer journey?
Any tips on how you're going to document all this customer journey?
How you document it? Yeah. How do you document the customer journey? It's a good question. I'm just trying to think about a way of explaining it in a simple way. It'd be quite easy to show kind of visually how you do this and how you start to document it. If you haven't done this before, I'd say start off with a very simple way. I'd start off with a way, with Jake. Here we've got three 3 phases to our service. We've got a pre-service phase, the kind of actual service period, and this post-service phase. This is probably quite standard for most companies. I'd look, I suppose, first of all, at what information we already have about each of these phases. What are our call center agents telling us about each of these phases? Who phones up, and when they phone up, what questions do they have? If they go on the website, what do they look at? How long do they stay online? What things do they typically look at? What questions do they have? Do they email in with any specific questions? If we've got good CRM systems, do they email first? And you know, what's the order of these that they look in? How informed are they? So I'd start to document all of the things that you know. Call internal staff, real kind of, if you've got front level staff, they're often a great source of information. They deal with customers all the time, and they will be able to give you a good sense of the questions that they have and the process that they go through. So for sure, get together a cross-functional team of frontline users and of owners of each part of the service. So in this instance, we might have somebody from the marketing team who are responsible for the brochures. We might have somebody for the sales team that are responsible for the literature and for briefing people. We might have somebody in the front line. If we own estate agents, we might have somebody there, a real frontline user who speaks to customers all day. We might have somebody from IT or someone from the user experience team who's responsible for the website design. We might have somebody from the airline or from one of the partners there that is responsible and oversees that can give input. We might have somebody from the hotel experience as part of this cross-functional team. So we'd kind of build up something that we can get different users, different kind of perspectives from a company perspective. Then we can identify the different types of customers that we're interested in learning about. This experience would be different if we were dealing with maybe older customers, maybe customers with more extreme needs, customers who have mobility challenges, or customers who are blind. How would that be? So there might be particular types of customers that we're interested in, and we could go through this journey with them. And then I would simply sit in a room and I would simply build this with them, ask them those questions. You've recently booked a holiday with them. We're thrilled to have you on board. How did you go about how did you go about selecting our company? How many other companies did you go to before? And just really listen and watch them as they go through this process of uncovering this. We could ask people to give them a diary or some kind of an app and say, rate it as you go along. And once they've booked this, we could give them a discount, or we could give them the scuba diving or something. If they were to fill out a diary about the experience, how was it as they got to the airport? Did they find the parking okay? Was there a trolley to get you from here to here? And get them in their own language to identify those frustrations and those high points, and really track through the experience that they've had. Because I think it's in the gaps that we can really step in and add value. We spoke about Amazon, and they've really provided a way of narrowing the gaps between all these other service providers and to create a seamless, consistent experience for us. And I think that's our opportunity as experienced experts, is to really set in and do that. I think it's really important when you map it, that you map it from the customer's experience, that you map it from a customer type. So in this case, we're managing it from Jake's experience, that we track that through. that we capture all of the things that they've been through, that we capture the channels that they've been through, that we've captured any key verbatim. We can enrich this maybe with a score or a sentiment that they receive, that they give at this time. This is a really strong tool. So at the moment we're mapping the as-is journey, the thing that Jacob's actually experienced. We could also use this tool to manage the to-be journey. So the experience that we'd like Jake to receive. So if we want him to be greeted at reception by the holiday representative and shown to the room and shown the ocean view and maybe some important parts and some of the skyline and told about complimentary drinks in the bar at 6 o'clock. If that was a part that was important to the brand and something that we really wanted to amplify, a really kind of key moment that we wanted to tap into, then we could also design that to-be journey. What would be the best possible experience that we could provide? And then as a result of that, we could brief in the training, we could brief in any kind of materials or systems or processes to make sure that that happens consistently. So this is a good tool, and there's lots of information. And if that hasn't answered your question, happy to kind of pick up a conversation afterwards with anybody about how these tools can be used.
Hi, Brandon. Sorry to cut in. There's one question from Wan Chin. So as this is about uncovering moments of truth, how would one prioritize what type of customers to focus on or observe, as what may not be so obvious may end up making up the most of business end?
Okay, that's great. So once we've mapped out the customer journey, we're able to then overlay lots of other things. This is like our coat hanger of information. We can overlay which parts of these processes are a high cost to the business. We're able to see it through that lens. So I work for an energy company, so one of the projects that I worked on, somebody submitted a meter reading. They said how much electricity they'd used. And then when they hadn't heard anything back, they then phoned up to find out whether that had been received and whether that was going to be included in the next bill. So by understanding that, we were able to put in an automatic message. Thank you very much for supplying your meter reading. All the information has been correctly inputted into the system, and you will see these changes reflected into your next bill. Really appreciate you taking the time to send this to us. That simple recognition of what happened allowed us to save huge amounts of money. So first of all, I'd say get this framework in place and then start to enrich it with other pieces of information. The question was slightly different. The question was about, from a customer's perspective, which of those are the kind of large moments of truth, those kind of standout moments that we can amplify within this. And I'd say within that we can, again, it's kind of within the expression of the customer will express that to us. Are they disproportionately talking about a particular part of the journey, a particular part that's a high point, or a particular part that's a low point within that journey? When we look at the kind of strategic view of this, and we look at the drivers of that, customers will invariably talk about a part in the process that stood out to them as being disproportionate in creating that experience. From a data science point of view, there's a lot of work we can do in terms of retrospectively doing those driver analysis, in multivariate statistics in terms of kind of teasing that out. But if you're getting started with this, I'd really, start to look at those areas that customers talk about most frequently. Talk to your front line. Which questions do they get to? Talk to the hotel, in this instance. Who's asking the most questions? Is it the fact that there's not extra towels? Is that taking up most of the time? Is it, what is it? The questions spoken and unspoken? Is it the fact that they don't know whether they can take 2 eggs for breakfast or just 1? What can we do to kind of really bring this to life for people? Look on the social media. Look through the complaints and the feedback that you're getting, both high and low, and that will spark better questions. And we spoke at the beginning about the fact that this is iterative, and as we go through the process, we do get better questions. We are able to refine it. We are able to tune in, those areas that are most important to us. But in the first instance, anyway, I'd say they should be relatively easy to find. They should be those things that customers talk about consistently. If you were to go into Twitter now, what are your customers saying about you? When they've had a good experience, what kind of language do they use? Who do they talk about? Do they talk about the systems? Do they talk about the product? Do they talk about the front line? And if so, what do they say about each of those? And likewise, when they have a bad experience, what is it that they say? And what's the strength of sentiment that they use? There's lots of good sentiment analysis tools, and we can talk more about those if that's of interest to you. But we can really dig into that data. So it's a combination of those. Just conscious of time, are there any other questions?
Not at the moment for now.
Okay, thank you. So that's a great tool can be used there. Let me see if I can move on quite quickly. Again, maybe just give you one final tool to work with. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, especially at the moment with the amount of change that organizations are going through. So maybe I can leave you with this, just a tool that will allow you to triage out and understand how to prioritize the level of change that are going through. We are in a new normal, and I think more than ever though, this is our opportunity to earn the loyalty of our customers and to give an emotional response of our brand into the customer experience. And I think that if we get the customer experience right now, we will make our brands unforgettable. But to get it wrong now will leave our brands in a way that they'll be unforgivable in the eyes of our customers. So the stakes have never been higher in terms of doing this. So this is my final tool that I'd like to leave with you. It's around triaging: do now, do next, do later. And again, I encourage you to think about these and maybe make some notes. Look at those changes that are going to affect the business within the next 30 days. What are the change in regulations that we just need to get right? Constantly changing, those operational things, those frontline things. How do we respond? How do you set up the governance? How do you set up the feedback systems from the front line that allows you to make rapid and agile decision making and allows you to make changes that are going to happen quickly? And again, if we had more time or if we're face to face, we could talk about what those would look like for each of your businesses and how we'd set those up. These are the operational things that we just need to adapt to. And we could talk about how we could set up that working group, how quickly they'd meet, maybe that 30-minute huddle every morning, just to make sure that the operations run smoothly and they're always able to adapt to things. From that group, there'll be systemic things, there'll be things that are part of our new normal, that have fundamentally affected our journeys, our policies, our processes. And that's the things that we need to do next. We need to have longer term solutions, that those kind of one-off workarounds, that they just become part of the new way of working. From those, there'll be things that will fundamentally affect our business or the business of our partners and those we work with. and that these need to be implemented then into a longer term in the 6 to 12 months into business strategy. These maybe need kind of more fundamental board decision. Maybe there's training issues, maybe there's resourcing issues, maybe there's sourcing issues we need to look at that fundamentally affect, allow us to take advantage of opportunities, allow us to adapt to new situations. And so again, maybe just in closing, kind of conscious of time, we look at the do now, do next, do later. Had time have allowed, we could have gone through and asked ourselves within this, if we really understand our customers, we could go through this journey as we did for Jacob and say, how does this apply to our business? How well are our different customer types understood? How have their needs and wants and fears and frustrations changed over the past 6 months? Do we recognize this? How well is this understood within the business? How do we bring this customer voice to life and amplify it through the business? We could look at the changing needs and the shifts of the business. What are the questions that people are asking? When are they asking? Are they asking at different types of the day and night? Are they asking through different channels? We've seen a huge shift to online. Are online systems fit for purpose? How long are they waiting online? Are they getting the answers right first time? All of these questions we could go through in the context of this kind of coat hanger of the customer journey. You've been tremendously patient in kind of going through, so I thank you for your time, for your interaction. I hope that you've got something from this that relates directly back to your business. We have been slightly kind of rushed through this, and I accept that it's not been the kind of ideal platform across Zoom, but thank you for your attention. And if you do have any questions, really open for you to reach out directly to me after the conference. If we're at the conference, we would have had a kind of a drink at the bar or caught up over dinner. Let's do the same virtually, and I extend that, on behalf of IQPC to kind of get in touch and continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Like Jake, Stephen is also dreaming about his holiday. Yeah, so just a reminder to everyone, if you wish to connect with Brandon, do take note of his contact details on the screen right now. Another way to get in connection with Brandon is to actually go to Events Air, the CX Network events platform. Go to Meeting Hub, and you can actually meet not just Brandon, but also every one of your peers who is actually on the Event Hub itself. Do connect with them, and you can chat with them live. Thank you so much for attending this workshop, and we'll see you again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone.